Hi, in this screencast I would like to show you how to automatically deploy an ASP.NET Core application with team services to a Linux machine. Before we dive in, let's see what we can achieve with such a pipeline. So let's see what the purpose is here. So here we have the production website. As you see, this is the production. And let's say that we want to change this text a little bit. So we go into the source code, we add a little bit to it, and let's commit this now, and let's push this. Now, one thing I commit right now to the master. Normally, of course, it's better to use a branch and then move everything back to the master once you are finished. But to make this quick, now I commit to the master. And this basically triggers the pipeline. So the rule is once I commit to the master, that triggers the pipeline. Obviously, you can configure that so that can be changed. But in my case, I always start the pipeline once I commit to the master. So what is the pipeline which is started now? I created a small PDF on this. So what happened now is that from my Mac, I committed with Git, and this basically triggers a build in VSTS, which means it does a .NET restore, it does a .NET publish, and it basically creates a zip file. And once the build is finished and once it's successful, it automatically triggers a release, and that basically installs an SSH keys because the deployment machine is a Linux machine and I can only log in with SSH. So the first step of the release is to install the SSH keys on a release agent, and then copy the zip file from VSTS basically to the deployment machine. And then I have a deployment script, which is basically a bash script, and that unzips the zip file which contains the application, and it basically copies all the files to a location where the application lives. It restarts the application, and then it removes the zip file and everything which is not needed afterward. But we will take a look at that. So what happens right now is that this pipeline is running, and we can even take a look at that. So here we are in VSTS, and that's the build. It's right now it's in progress, and once this is finished, then it will trigger a release, and without me doing anything, it will basically deploy the application. So let's wait a little bit, and then we will see the change. So as you see, I got an email, the build is finished, and that will trigger a release, which is the second step. So basically copying everything and stuff like that. This is in progress right now. And once that's finished, then we will see the changes on the production website. Yep, as you see, the changes are there without me doing anything. So I basically just committed. In the remaining part, we will see how you can have a similar setup. Remove the configuration from team services, and now let's recreate a setup which we had before. So on the PDF, I showed you that we need basically two things: a build and a release, and that's what we will do now. So let's start with the build. And for ASP.NET Core, this is actually really easy. We just define a new build for ASP.NET Core, apply, and we have to select the build agent. This is important. The Visual Studio 2017 is able to build that. I had problems with this Linux preview build. Theoretically that should work, but right now it didn't work for me. and the hosted, I guess that's an older Visual Studio version, and I tried that a few months ago, and that also did not work. So I highly suggest you to use the Visual Studio 2017. That's one change, and that's basically already done. I have one small change since I have multiple projects in my solution, and I just want to build one, and this is the block site solution. So I also changed that both for the restore and for the build. Yeah, this is a bug. I have to go back to change that. And that's it. We basically have a build for an ASP.NET Core application. So as you see, it basically does a restore, a build, it runs all the tests, it does a publish, and then it will have an artifact, which is basically a zip file with the application. This is, as you see, this is defined here. There is one important thing which you also can set up here. This is the triggers. What I like to have is that once I commit to the master, then it will basically trigger a build. So that's it. Now we have a build, and let's move on to the second part, to the release. Let's move on to the release definition. For that, let's go into releases and then click new definition. Now, if you work with Azure, then you can basically select one of your scenarios here, and that is basically prepared. But in some cases, for example, in my case, I have a Linux machine which is running not in Azure. And for these, like I would say, special cases, there is this empty template, and that way you can build your own release steps. So that's why I basically choose empty. I just call this prod Linux deployment, and now I can define my tasks. So what I need are basically two things. I need the SSH keys, and I have one bash script which I want to start. So so the first focus on the SSH keys. There is one task for that. This is in the preview stage, and unfortunately this didn't work for me. Maybe I did something wrong, but this is really new. This was introduced like I guess a few weeks ago. So this is not what we use. What we use is another thing called Decrypt File. This is a very cool feature. You can basically check in files, encrypt that with OpenSSL, and with this task you can basically decrypt these files. So what I have is I have a folder within my Git repository where I have my encrypted, this is very important, my encrypted private SSH keys. So no one can read that without the password. And with this decrypt task here, I can basically decrypt these files and use them as SSH keys. And once the deployment is done, then the decrypted files are removed. So this is secure. The other thing which I have in my deployment folder, again, this is in the Git repository. This is basically a deployment script, and we will take a look at that later. So let's set up the decryption of the SSH keys. So I want to call that like this. I obviously have to tell where the encrypted file is. I obviously have to have a password for that. and this is defined in a save variable. Here under variables you can define such things, and of course I have to have a name for it, and I save that. Now my setup is really special. I need 2 SSH keys because the deployment machine itself is not exposed to the internet. I have a proxy, so what we defined now was the SSH key for the proxy, and we need another one which is really for the deployment machine. So let's also set up that one very quickly. We need the encrypted file. The password is the same, and the pass is that. Okay, so with that, when a build is triggered, then these 2 tasks will run, and with that we will have SSH keys. Now the last part I showed you in my repository, that I have a deployment script, and the deployment script is basically a bash script, and here we have it. It basically first sets the permissions for the SSH keys, and then it will copy the file, the zip file, which is the application itself, from the artifacts directory to the target machine, and then it will basically run some SSH commands. As you see, first it will unzip the file, then it will remove the old version, then it will copy the new version to the folder where the application is started, and then it will restart the supervisor, which makes sure that the application is always running. Then it will just remove the zip file and the folder where the zip file was unzipped. So we just want to start this. So for that we have a shell script task. It's important that this has to be the last one. The last one, I said. The last one, yes. So I would like to call this like that, and we need to define the path to the script, which is this. So as you see, it's committed under the deployment folder, and basically that was it. So this is the deployment setup. One thing is this SSH key. This can be different for you, obviously, and this decrypt task, decrypt file task is like a temporary workaround. I hope that this install SSH key task will work in the future. Right now it doesn't work, unfortunately, or I did something wrong, but this setup works definitely, and we are done. So with that you can have a completely automated deployment for a Linux machine with ASP.NET Core. And the cool thing about that is that for a small application, like for example for my blog, it's basically free. So you can start free, and when your application grows bigger, then obviously you have to pay, but at the beginning for a small project, this is, I guess, a very good solution. Thanks for watching.